This woman is known to the world. Look closely. Do you recognize her? Listen to her story, then condemn her, if you can.
Ashamed? Oh, I'm not ashamed. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's true there were men in my life before Charles. I admit it. I made mistakes. I was young. I was stupid. I believed in men and their promises. But Charles knew about me before he took me into the house.
Vivian Hartley was born in Darjeeling in India in 1913 to fairly upper-class parents, and she was an only child. They had servants, she had a pony, and what a very magical environment to have grown up in. Rather came to an abrupt end because at age 6 she was taken to the United Kingdom, to Roehampton on the outskirts of London, to begin her Catholic education. She went into an all-girls boarding school. She was the youngest child in the convent and didn't see her parents for almost 2 years. At the boarding school, she excelled in performing arts. She played the cello, and it seemed from what Vivien Leigh later wrote was that she quite enjoyed the routine and the rather strict nature of the school. It gave her a discipline that would really come into great advantage later on as a stage and screen performer. In 1932, she had met her first husband, Lee Holman, from which she gets her stage name, her name Leigh. They married, and fairly quickly, within a year, she'd given birth to her only daughter, Suzanne. In 1935, she had her West End debut playing a supporting role in a play called The Mask of Virtue. It's probably one of those overnight, sensational stage debuts that people probably wish for. The theatre programme was reprinted with her face on the front, and she was called the Fame in a Night Girl because, although she was playing this supporting role, all the reviews the next day were focused on her performance, her beauty, her talent, and fairly shortly after that she was offered a film contract with Alexander Korda. So she experienced fame very, very quickly and quite a young age, but that certainly was her ambition. As she joins the Old Vic Company in 1937, and at this point she's met Laurence Olivier, who's establishing himself as one of the leading actors of his generation, and they've fallen in love. Olivier is also married to an actress, Jill Esmond, and he'd also had a child, a young child, so even though they're both married with children, they have fallen in love, and eventually they moved in together. And both their careers are very much in the ascendant.
When they set up home together, they were really the first celebrity couple. Everyone was enthralled by them. People felt that they were bigger than the Windsors. They were the romantic couple of their era.
They were glamorous and incredibly successful. Their films and stage productions were the must-see experiences of the day.
You don't understand.
I understand very well. Young loyalty is asked to pay for everyone's mistakes. Well, I won't let you. Listen, if the Queen sends you home in disgrace, I'll come with you and be disgraced too.
Dear. And foolish.
Why foolish? You love me, don't you?
Leigh was ravishingly beautiful. People always describe her as looking like a cat. She had beautiful feline bone structure and exquisitely chiseled features.
I thought she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. I never had reason to change that opinion. I thought she was a beautiful actress, and she charmed everybody, from the waiter to the dresser to the stage doorman. She had enormous charm.
It was also her character, her vivacity. People called her Vivling, And you can just see her going about vivifying everyone.
Oh, you want la
That's
la,
right.
la,
La
la,
la 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 la. Hey! I think we got something there.
By the mid-1930s, she's appearing in supporting roles in film and beginning to play lead roles on stage. And at this point, she's also read a novel that's come out, an American novel called Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. She rather becomes obsessed with this very, very feisty, rather selfish character of Scarlett O'Hara and becomes determined to play her. And she won the part. And when it's announced to the press, there is some controversy because it was considered that, you know, only an American woman could play this very, very famous American part. And here we have an English actress walking off with the role. Gone with the Wind was an international, global success, and overnight she became an international film star. She was the first British woman to win the Academy Award for Best Actress.
Gone with the Wind is incredible. There's something new in it every time. It was an incredible ordeal, the filming of it, but she keeps it so fresh. It's an astonishing performance, and she justifiably won that Oscar.
The Oliviers had two homes, one in Chelsea and the other in Buckinghamshire near Denham Studios, so within driving distance of London. It was called Notley Abbey. Olivier had discovered it in 1943. It was a 12th century former monastery. Throughout the 1950s, it really became like a theatrical Camelot.
It was just the most fun anyone could have. Vivian would sit up playing cards all night, and then everyone would stagger off to bed, and then in the morning she would turn out to have been up for hours planning the next day's entertainment. They wore costumes, they drank a lot, they took lovers from time to time. It just sounds glorious.
And I remember a big fire with Vivian had a wonderful kind of burning perfume that the whole house was imbued with. She had a trouser suit with a kind of chain thing belt. I remember thinking, nobody could be that tiny. And she was a perfect hostess.
She organised everything. I mean, after giving a performance every night, she should really be relaxing, not entertaining people. We went there every weekend after the Saturday night performance and just had the most wonderful time and met the most extraordinary people.
We have the Visitors book in the archive. Even on this page we have Orson Welles and children, Danny Kaye, Sue Holman, Suzanne, Vivien Leigh's daughter, mixing with Rex Harrison and Lily Palmer.
Judy Garland pops up at one point.
Richard Burton, Alec Guinness.
Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart.
Betty Davis, John Gielgud, the Red Graves constantly visiting. There's a cartoon by Gary Cooper. Himself was a cowboy, of course. Yeah. It's like a who's who of mid-20th century popular entertainment, all sort of captured in one book. In 1949, the Oliviers were both central in bringing A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams over to London. For its time, it was quite a controversial play, considering the themes of mental illness, sexual violence. That type of drama hadn't really been seen on the English stage before, so it was quite a turning point for British theatre history and for her. The critics were quite hostile to the content, but unanimous in praise in her performance. The Broadway and West End productions of Streetcar really guaranteed a film version, and Vivien Leigh was cast in the film. There's a lovely quote from Elia Kazan saying that he wanted Blanche to look as if she's not equipped to withstand modern, urban US life.
In the opening moments of Streetcar, you see the little girl that was suddenly dumped with the nuns. You see that lost look when she's looking for Stella, is it? She says, Stella, Stella, Stella. She wants her sister. What Vivian told me she was saying is, mother, mother, mother. And that moment on the screen is so alive. And that performance of Streetcar is so wonderful because there's so much of Vivian in it, in what Vivian suffered.
It's a very defining performance for her, and really the closest we get to seeing her stage performance captured on film.
Duel of Angels was a play by Girardot, who was immensely popular at that time, but it was also beautifully directed by Jean-Louis Barrault. And we came into the Apollo Theatre and then went on tour. She was incredibly kind to me and accepted me as an equal, which she need not have done. It was a rather glamorous experience because of Vivian, and I think because of me. The two of us together gave it a kind of gloss.
The casting for Duel of Angels, the part of Count Marcellus. She knew her lines before we all did. She was very, very professional. She was the most beautiful, most intelligent, most intellectual, funny, absurd, and inspiring person that I've ever met in my life. I think that she had more talent than people allowed her to have, especially people in the theatre. That's why she was so marvellous on screen, because it was an inner performance.
I think Olivier, in some way, both fostered her talent and held her back, because to be married to someone who was, I guess, with Gielgud and Richardson, the great actor of the century, and a very dictatorial man. And I always had the feeling in Duel of Angels that she had gone through the role with him, and that he had given her nuances and movements and things, that she never changed from the first performance to the last. And that's unusual, but Vivian was exact and perfect, but it was not free. And I think it was hard for her to present herself completely. I think she always felt, she never said this, under the shadow of this great man. One time I went into her dressing room and she wasn't on in the second act, and she had a beautiful red dress and this black wig and a little table with a light and a red light that cast this lovely glow around her, and she was crying, but not like you, or certainly I would cry, with a red nose and puffy face. It was just, I swear, as though just diamond tears came down her cheeks. And I was very sorry. I knew that at that time her marriage was not as strong as it had been. She once described it to me as 20 years of, she said, Tristan and Isolde, Romeo and Juliet, nothing could compare with their love. And that, of course, is true.
By the late 1950s, Olivier's marriage was coming to an end, and they divorced in 1960. But outside of Olivier's shadow, Vivien Leigh continued to perform. She performed in the Old Vic tour of Australia and South America, and continued making films. She also appeared in 1963, a Broadway musical called Tovarich, which she won a Tony Award. So she always continued working right up to her death in 1967.
What's fascinating about her career is it starts in an age of the silver screen, when her contemporaries were Lauren Bacall, Ava Gardner. Then she steals the prize from all of them by moving into glorious Technicolor. And by the end of her career, she's holding her own among method actors who are doing something entirely different. And she's as at home among both groups. And that's really something quite special. Above all things, Leigh was intelligent, which is something that comes across very strongly in the V&A archive. And she used her intelligence both as the backbone to her ambition, but also in her acting. And you can see it, you can sort of smell it, there's a raw intelligence there. She also understood the medium of film in a way that certainly her husband, Sir Laurence Olivier, really didn't.
And when you watch her film performances today, she's not mannered. She's without mannerisms, and her performances have really stood the test of time.
She had an impact on her age, and she continues to have an impact.
There was something about her that no one else has had or ever will have, and it's quite indefinable.